Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome to day 2 of my 12 weeks of Christmas. Today we're going to shake it up a little bit, and I literally mean shake it up because we're going to be making a shaker's card. Well, I guess I should say it's a shaker's tag, but you could absolutely turn this into a card if you chose to do so. Now, I don't make very many shaker cards, and you probably know that from the videos that I've published in the past. I think in my whole crafting career, I've made maybe 3 shaker cards. For some reason, I just don't have that in my arsenal of go-to cards. But I wanted to go ahead and do this today because I thought it would be really fun to have a kind of interactive tag that you can either add to a Christmas present or even as an ornament on your tree. Now for the base of my tag, I wanted to do something, use something that was pretty sturdy. So I'm using old game boards, and I've shared this with you in past videos where I'll go to Goodwill and I'll find old games such as Monopoly, and I think this one was Payday, and I will bring them home and I will cut them up because they're the perfect thickness and sturdiness to be able to use as baseboards. Now there are absolutely baseboards out there made of chipboard that you can purchase. In fact, I think Tim Holtz has a couple different sizes, and I've used those in the past, and those are great. There's nothing wrong with them, but I certainly like to save money wherever I can, and knowing that I was going to cover these with designer paper, it really made sense for me to go ahead and just create my own. Now, if I were going to add stain or paint it or have a design where the board would be showing, then I absolutely would use something purchased from a shop. But because I'm going to go ahead and cover this, like I said, I was able to get away with upcycling some old game boards. Now I'm going to also be creating a frame, and the frame is going to be actually what holds all of my little sequins for my shaker. And I wanted my frame to be a little bit thicker. I didn't necessarily want it as thick as chipboard, but I wanted it thicker to be able to just give it some sturdiness. So I just took a box that I had from prior shipping, and I cut it down to be able to use it for my frame. Now with this particular cardboard, it was relatively thin. It wasn't really thick cardboard. It didn't have a lot of corrugation in it. I guess that's what it's called, the foam in the middle. But it was thin enough that I could cut through it with my die, but thick enough to give it a little bit more sturdiness. So if you're able to find items around the house just from shipping supplies or whatnot, it's always a good idea to recycle those because it really will save you a bit of money when you are crafting. Cereal boxes are also really good, but I wanted it a little bit thicker than a cereal box. So if you were to use a cereal box, I probably would use my die twice, and then I would glue my cardboard together. All right, so as you see here, I went ahead and I glued down my designer paper onto my chipboard, and now I'm just trimming it up to the size of my tag. And then once I have that paper trimmed down, then I'm going to go ahead and work to cover that cardboard piece. Now remember, that cardboard piece is going to actually be cut with a die. So depending on the thickness of your die, you may or may not want to cover your cardboard beforehand. When I first made my promo for this actual design, I cut the cardboard first, and then I cut the paper, and then I glued the paper on, and that seemed to work fine. But then when I actually created this one, I glued the paper on first, and then I tried to run it through my Big Shot, and while it did cut, I did have a little bit more difficulty because just that little extra thickness made the die a little bit harder to cut through the paper. So just kind of keep that in mind. It really was no problem to actually cut them separately. I just thought I would try to save a step, and that kind of backfired on me just a bit, but I was able to recover. All right, so here I'm just sizing it up against my tag, and as you can see, the cardboard piece does hang over just a little bit. So I wanted to make sure that the back side was covered as well. And I really only need a small portion on each side of that cardboard to be covered because, again, it is going to be glued to the tag, and only a portion of the back side is going to be showing. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going to take a couple of strips, and I'm going to glue them to the back side of the cardboard. And then once I get those pieces glued to the back side of the cardboard, then I will go back to the tag and I will add some designer paper to the back side of the tag. So as you can see, I'm kind of going back and forth, and it is strategic. There is a reason I'm doing this. And this is because I want to make sure I have some dry time for the glue. With wet adhesive, again, you tend to have a little bit of movement once you place it down, which typically I love, because if I'm trying to line up something on a card, or I want to make sure something is straight, I like that additional movement time. But when I'm actually creating and cutting parts of the paper off, I don't want it moving on me. So that's why I'm kind of going back and forth, just to give it enough time to get tacky, so when I do start to trim the paper, it won't move on me. Now, before I actually go to add the paper on the back side of the tag, I do want to show you an extra step that I typically take when I'm working with chipboard and paper. I have this sander that I actually got at my, when I went and had a pedicure years ago, and they gave me a little bag, and I saved this because it's been great for crafting. And what I like to do is I like to sand the edges, because the sander is perfect to be able to cut some of the edge off of the paper, and it will make it align nicely to the tag. And then once I finish sanding it down, as you can see, I'm just coming on my tag and I'm adding some distressed walnut stain to edge it up. So it just is an extra step that I find is really well worth it, and it only takes a couple of seconds. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add some more paper to the back side of the tag, using the same process. I'm just lining it up here to make sure that this is going to cover the tag completely. And then I will get out my wet adhesive, and the wet adhesive that I'm using is the 3-in-1 Beacon, which is the only glue that I use. I've been crafting for several years, and I've gone through several different types of adhesive, from the pink ATG gun to liquid glues, and this is the one that I just am in love with. I get it at my local Joann's Fabrics, and typically I'll be able to get it with a 40% off coupon, but I think it's great. Like I said, I like it because it gives me movement room when I am putting down layers, and it is a great tacky adhesive. All right, so once I have my paper glued down, then I'll just trim up the sides like I did on the front portion of the tag, and then I'll sand the edges and add my distressed walnut stain. Okay, so here is where I actually am showing you my die cut, and this is the frame that I'm going to be using for my shaker card. And as you can see, part of the paper didn't get trimmed off, so I'm going to go ahead and take an X-Acto knife here and trim off the edge to make it a nice frame. And then once I have my frame completely trimmed, I'm going to go ahead and add my clear, I guess it's called cello paper. I'm not really even sure what it's called, but I'm going to add my clear wrapping to the inside of my frame. Now, like I said, I don't make very many shaker cards, and I didn't have any clear, I don't even know what it's called, the clear paper to be able to add to the top or the inside of the frame. So I just used one of my supply packaging envelopes. So when we get our ephemera pieces, you know, it comes in the plastic wrapper. So I just cut one of those up, and that's what I'm going to use for my paper. So if you guys can tell me what that's even called, I don't even know what it's called, because I don't make very many shaker cards. So leave me a message in the comment and let me know what those are called, because I'm sure you can probably buy them, right? I mean, we can buy every type of craft supply out there, but I decided I didn't need to go spend money on another item when I can just use some wrap that probably was going to end up in the trash anyway. All right, so once I have the inside of my frame trimmed, again, I'm just taking my distressed walnut stain to the inside edge, just to distress it up just a bit. All right, so I'm just finishing up here adding the distressed walnut stain, and then I will go back to my tag base and I'll finish trimming up the paper. Like I said, I tend to go back and forth with these two items here just for the sake of having some dry time. So if you are going to do this in an assembly line, you probably want to do all the tags first, and then you can do all of the frames second. But because I was only making the one design, I kind of went back and forth just to give myself a little bit more drawing time. All right, and then once I have it all trimmed up, then I'm going to go ahead and take my frame and I'm going to add it to that clear wrap. Okay, so once I add a little bit more adhesive to my tag, then we're going to go ahead and move on to adding the clear wrap onto my frame. And once again, the clear wrap is just part of packaging from some of my ephemera pieces that I had laying on my desk. Literally, it was probably going to end up in the trash. But when I saw this, I thought, you know what, I can easily just use this and it would work perfectly. So it was an envelope. So I went ahead and just kind of cut it open to make it flat. And I wanted to get it as flat as possible. What was nice again about that wet glue is I could go ahead and add the glue to the back of the frame, and then I could tighten up that plastic wrap to make it really tight, so that way it didn't have a lot of wrinkles. And honestly, it worked perfectly. I'm sure that there are lots of manufacturers out there that sell this type of paper, I guess, right, for you to use on shaker cards, but this worked great. And it was just something that was going to end up in the trash anyway, so I was able to save it and add it to my my tag design. And this plastic worked so well, I actually even contemplated cutting some up and saving it in my crafty stash. But I decided it was pretty easy to come by, so if I ever decide to make another shaker card or another shaker tag, I'm sure I can easily find some packaging that I'll be able to upcycle, as I'm doing here now. And then once I have it trimmed, the next thing that I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to add some foam tape around the edge of the frame. Now, this was interesting because, like I said, I don't make very many shaker cards, and perhaps you can share with me your experience. But when I added the foam tape, I made it as close to the inside edge of the frame as possible, which made sense, right? Because I didn't want my sequins necessarily going underneath the frame. But what I found is some of the sequins actually stuck to the sides of the foam tape. So when I actually shaked it, some of the sequins actually stuck to it, which was fine. I mean, I thought that it was really cute for the design anyway, but I'm just curious, is there a way to avoid that? I'm not really sure how I would have done that because, like I said, I had to put my foam tape all the way to the inside edge, and that actually was sticky as well. So I'm just curious, for any of you shaker card makers out there, do you ever experience that, and is there any way around that as well? And then once I have it glued to my frame, then of course I'm going to just come in with my scissors and I'll trim it down to trim off the edges, so that way I have some nice clean edges. Now, because my frame actually did hang over the side of the edge of the tag, I did trim down my foam tape. If it was going to be exactly on my card base or my tag where it wasn't going to hang over, then I probably would not have even bothered to trim it down. I would have just kept it to fit the sides of the frame. But again, because it was going to be showing, I didn't want that foam to show on the back side. So before I actually place it down, I want to go ahead and add my sequins onto my tag. And I'm just going to basically eyeball it here. Like I said, I don't make a lot of shaker tags or shaker cards, so I'm not really even sure what the ratio of shaker to card is, but I'm just going to go ahead and eyeball it when I actually put down my sequins. Now, the gold sequins that I'm going to be using here is from a kit that I got, oh my goodness, probably about a year and a half ago, when I was getting the monthly kit from Tonic. And it was part of the kit that had paper and embellishments. So it's not really a product that I would typically buy. I don't buy sequences, and I don't buy shaker inserts because, like I said, I don't typically make shaker cards. But since I already had it in my stash and it was gold, which is perfect for Christmas, I did decide to create this shaker card. And to be frank, I really like the way it turned out. Perhaps I will start making more shaker cards and shaker tags in the future, but it's just not something I typically make, and I'm not really sure why, because I think that they're cute, and it's probably because I don't ordinarily have sequins or anything that I can put inside of a card to shake. But since I did have this gold sequence, it worked out perfectly. Now, if this is the first video that you're seeing of my 12 Weeks of Christmas series, you might want to go back to my playlist and find the one from last week. I'm going to be doing a Christmas design for the next 12 weeks leading up to Christmas, and each week I will be giving you a link to an advent calendar where you're going to be able to download a freebie each week. So certainly you're going to want to go back and watch the first video if you haven't done so you can get your first freebie. Now, I'm only going to keep the links up for the freebies through the end of the year, and I'll probably take it down sometime in January. So don't wait. If you definitely do want to participate in my Advent calendar for my 12 weeks of Christmas, certainly go grab your download while I have the links available. Okay, so now that we have our sequence in our shaker frame, I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of paper dolls here, and I'm going to add them to the outside of the frame. And I didn't necessarily want to put them right in the middle because I think then you wouldn't be able to see all those lovely sequences shake very well. So I decided to go ahead and put one of the little characters on the side of the frame, and then the little girl, I'm going to say it's his sister, his little sister. And I'm going to put her right next to him just to decorate up the frame. I use the Tim Holtz paper dolls in a lot of my designs just because I love the little characters, and even though I have a whole box full of paper dolls, I certainly can't resist buying the new sets over the holidays. He does a really good job. He and Paula do a great job finding wonderful holiday images and pictures to use for our paper dolls. And these two little characters are just perfect for a winter scene. And as you can see, just place them off to the side. You can still see all that wonderful sequence in the back of them. And when you shake it, you'll be able to see it really nicely as well. All right, so I am just adding a little bit of foam tape here to pop up my characters. I believe for the little boy, I actually put him flush against the frame. And then for her, I'm going to pop her up just a little bit just to make her look like she's in the foreground just a bit. And then once I had my two characters in place, I decided that I still needed a little bit more embellishment on that frame. If you like to go a little bit plain, I think it probably would be fine, but certainly if I can add more embellishments, I'm going to take every opportunity to do that. So I have these wonderful holiday flare buttons that I've been hoarding over the last couple of years. I get this Ideology product every year, and I just love it. I know eventually I'll use it, and it's some of the product that I don't mind hanging on to because as I collect it, I'm able to create more designs and more embellishments on my designs because then I have the product. And it is a little bit easier on the checkbook when I do just add to my stash bits by bits. And then I have it to use it when I create in the future. So I had these flare buttons that came out, I don't know, probably a couple years ago maybe. And I thought one would look really nice in the corner here. So I went ahead and just picked out one that I thought fit nicely, and I'm going to be gluing it onto the bottom left side of the corner in just a moment. Now, if I were making a shaker card, I probably would not have added the flare button because it just is a little bit too bulky. But because this is going to be some sort of a decorative item, whether it go on a present or maybe on a tree, or perhaps even just hanging around the house as a decorative piece, I was okay with adding the flare button. Typically, embellishments like this are a little bit more bulky, and while they look great on cards, a lot of times they don't mail very well. So these types of embellishments I'll typically use in journals, or in decorative pieces, because I know it's not necessarily something I'm going to have to stick in an envelope and put in the mail. If I am going to give it to somebody, it will typically go in some sort of a parcel or a box, and I know it'll be protected that way. And these little flare buttons glue on really nicely. I'm sure the original one had a pin back on the back side of it, but Tim was kind enough not to add the pin on these flare buttons, so it is flat on the back side, which will take glue nicely and hold to our flat surface. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dig through my ephemera pack here and try to find a nice little sentiment that I can put on the top here, because of course I do want to go ahead and put some sort of greeting on this tag. And as I dug through my ephemera packaging here, I was able to find this holiday greetings tag, which fits the top of my frame perfectly. And I did decide to pop up this little label using some of the foam tape I already had on my desk. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just trimming down the foam tape to add to the back of the label, and then I'll add it to the top portion of that frame. All right, so we are getting to the end of this design, but of course, I decided that it needed just a little bit more embellishment. And what's nice about these types of designs, y'all, is you can stop at any point. What I always say is, you know when you're finished. So as you're going through your process of creating your tags or creating your cards, to me, there's never too many embellishments, but certainly there has to be a point where we do stop. So you can embellish it as much as you want or as little as you want, depending on what your style is. Okay, so I'm finishing up and adding this little label, and then I decided that I thought the tag needed some snow at the bottom, because of course this is a winter scene. So I thought a little bit of snow at their feet would be really nice. So in digging through my mixed media products, I did find where last year I did purchase the grit snow, and I was very happy when I opened it up and it wasn't dried out. A lot of times this product, depending on where you live, of course, isn't going to have life forever. At some point your product will dry out, but when I did open it up, I was very happy to see that there was still a lot of great product that was still juicy and still able for me to use with my palette knife. Certainly some of the grit snow was crusty on the edges, but like I said, your product doesn't last forever. So if you have some of this wonderful media grit snow, make sure that you use it on some of your makes this year, because it certainly won't last forever. So I went ahead and got my palette knife, and I'm going to add a little bit of snow to the bottom of the tag here. And I love how this dries. If you've never used this grit snow before, when it dries, and while this little jar looks small, keep in mind you don't need very much at all. I mean, when I was putting my snow onto my tag, I hardly used any of it. In fact, I had to pull some of it off because I didn't want it to look too bulky. But you use very little, so this little jar will go a long way, and it is really a great addition to some of your products for your holiday makes. So if I were to recommend any product in this video, it probably would be the grit snow, because I just love the results that you get. And they work, it works really well with your little paper doll characters. Guys, it looks so real. It really looks like snow, and it's a wonderful addition to some of your holiday makes. Okay, so at this point, after I added the snow, I could have definitely stopped here, but I decided I wanted to go ahead and use another one of my favorite products from Tim Holtz. And this is probably, I'd have to say, my second favorite type of product from his line. Certainly the paper dolls are my first favorite, and then the remnant rubs. And if you've watched some of my videos in the past, and I certainly hope that you have, and if you haven't, make sure you check out the playlists, because I have a lot of designs where I've used these remnant rubs. Just like the paper dolls, he comes out with seasonal remnant rubs, and he came out with a new set this year. Over the last couple of years, he hadn't come out with any new designs for his remnant rubs. So when I saw that this year's design was kind of a postal Christmas theme. I was pretty excited about it. So this is definitely a product I probably will stock up on. I'll go to Joann's and I'll use my 50% off coupon, and I'll just keep going back, and every time I go I'll probably pick up another package, because these are great just to use throughout the year. While this one particularly has a lot of Christmas sentiments, there still are other postal theme remnant rubs that you can use on some of your other designs throughout the year. So I went ahead and chose just a couple of items to add to the frame. I added the 25, of course, and then I think I added the stars. I can't remember, but I did come in actually and add a couple of stars from the baseboard set that he came out with this year. The baseboard is kind of like chipboards, and this set this year had some nice little stars that I decided to add to the frame as well. So it was just a really nice final addition to the tag before finishing it up. So as I finish up this tag, I just wanted to remind everybody that I will have a link to my second week for my Advent calendar. So go ahead and check out the link in the description box, and I will take you to where you can download my second freebie for my 12 weeks of Christmas. I also want to remind you that I do have a shop, Taylormadecards4u.com, and a lot of the makes that I'm going to be doing in this series will be available in the shop. So hopefully you'll check it out, and if there's anything that you see that you just can't live without, hopefully it will still be available in the shop if you want it. Additionally, I did want to let you know that I do have a new membership program over on my website, which works kind of like a Patreon membership. And I have two tiers. I have the fan membership, and then I have the crafter membership. And depending on where you're at, you can choose to be a member on either one of those tiers. The crafting membership is kind of like a monthly digital kit that you'll get along with some other perks along the way. It does also give you access to some of my free tutorials over on my website, so I will leave links to that as well. And if you would like to become a member of my community, I would certainly love to have you join my Patreon membership. All right, so actually before I added the stars, I did add some walnut stain distress ink just to distress it up just a bit, and then I glued it onto the frame using my 3-in-1 beacon glue. All right, so I am going to go ahead and add some string to the top of the tag. So I'm going to go ahead and punch a hole here in just a minute using with the We Are Memory Makers hole punch. It's one of those heavy duty hole punchers that works for eyelets as well, and it's one of my favorite products. It was a little bit costly when I bought it, but it works great because it punches through chipboard. So I was able to punch the hole right through the tag and then add my twine. Now I wasn't really sure what I was going to add, but ultimately I did end up using just some twine to add to the top of the tag, and then I unraveled the twine to go ahead and just make it look a little bit more festive. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up here with some holiday music, and I will have some pictures of the finished 2 tags that I created using this design. So be sure to stick around to the end so you can check out my finished products. And as always, I'll leave a list of the products that I've used in this video. So if you do decide that you want to try to make this design during the holidays, you'll know what products I used as well. I think this is a cute little tag. It would make a great gift, maybe a tree ornament or just some sort of decor around the house. All right, everybody, I'm going to leave you now with some music, and we'll see you again next week.